Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Sassy Talks. I am actually pretty excited because we are continuously doing a lot of podcasts now, and the rhythm is right there. We're getting, SaaS leaders from the Indian SaaS ecosystem and also international now, coming to the podcast, spending time and sharing a lot of insights from their amazing experiences in their careers. Today, again, we have one of the SaaS leaders. He's been in the industry for almost a decade now. He's also done a lot, seen a lot, and that's why we have him here. We want to learn from him. We want to get as many insights as possible, and I think he's the right guy. This is Tejaswi, the marketing director for Hubilo acquired Fielddrive at the moment. He's worked with companies like PipeMonk, Wingify, and a couple of more early stage SaaS companies. And today we are going to be discussing the 0 to 1 journey. We're going to keep our focus right there. And of course, now Tejasvi has taken up leadership role, so we will definitely go and touch that bit as well. And how does the experience look like today? Welcome, Tejasvi. Welcome to the Sassy Talks.
Thank you, Ishan. Nice to meet everyone. Hey, everyone. I think your introduction made me reflect that thoda, like age is catching up. But yeah, I'm excited about sharing what I have learned, and I think more importantly, what I have learned not to do and evolving through my career. Right, like I think if anybody, even one person from here, can learn from my mistakes, I'll be more than happy to share that. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Tejasvi. I think what is more important is to understand what not to do, and that is only possible by making mistakes and learning from them quickly.
Yeah.
So we are definitely going to, want to know a lot about the things that the mistakes that you made and how you recovered and how did you learn from them, right? So let's get into the 0 to 1 journey. It's also something that interests me, having worked with a lot of early stage companies ourselves, right? 0 to 1, like. I think one important question that I want to start with in this journey is product market fit has multiple definitions
Yeah.
around, right? What
Yeah.
is your definition? What is Tejasvi's definition of product market fit?
Yeah, I actually commented in one of the posts recently, which was going viral, about how long does it take to reach product market fit, and the poster didn't like it. So I kind of reflected on, hey, I think I'm right still. So I'll share what I mean, what I meant in that comment. So I think product market fit for me is a sense of repeatability in your growth, right? If you are able to find a place in the market with the product or the solution that you are providing without quite worrying, almost like a person who has to live paycheck by paycheck, right? Like, hey, what will happen next month? Will I get my salary? How do I sustain my EMI? Things like that. So those questions as a business, if you are not asking at a certain moment of time with the solution you have, according to me, you have found a place in the market where there are growing set of customers wanting what you have built or what you are building, even like in the future. That sense of repeatability and confidence in your own growth, it's more like, it's not a metric for me, it's a feeling that you get as a company and not just as a founder, right? I think many founders have this, like, of course, sometimes coming from the good sources of learning, which is, if I feel confident as a founder, then the company is, like, along with me. My lessons have seen that it's not the case often. A founder can be in a very different mental space compared to the employees who work with him or her. So for me, the founder needs to have those discussions regularly internally, saying, hey, are we there, right? And that feeling as a company that yes, we can kind of break through the market, we are growing steadily. The viral success stories are few and far between, so I don't need to kind of build a case around it. But the normal average company that can grow, that has some repeatability, and that feeling as a company and as a team that yes, we are doing well and let's go on and beat the market, basically. So for me, it's much more a feeling you get when you hire people, when you talk to your customers. It's like a bullish feeling, right? Like, hey, we are doing well. And also, of course, the customers need to keep validating that every month, every quarter, saying, yeah, the direction is nice. So I don't think it's a metric or a time scale or a number you can break down saying, we have reached it. I think it's much more philosophically poignant for me. It's a very internal feeling, both as a group and a person for me. Yeah.
I
Can we?
don't think I've heard such a perspective
Yeah.
ever around product market fit. So
Yeah.
this is pretty interesting. Now that you say this, if I have to visualize such a situation, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think instead of a metric, if it's a feeling, right? And I think a lot of time businesses miss out on the people factor that always exists, and which is probably the most important. And I can comment on this because in my journey, in the last 6 months, I have learned so much about people, right,
Yeah.
as an organization, right, which was not there earlier. So I can actually relate to it. Though we don't have a product, but I can understand the kind of feeling that you're talking about, which makes you realize that you're actually there and you can, get into that market and break it through. Right.
Yeah.
Amazing perspective to start off with. It's a
I
really
think
good start to the podcast.
I think you are a good case study. Your growth, your journey stage is also a good case study of making the second point, which I was thinking about, which is it's very contextual, right? I think the challenge with learning nowadays, according to me, is you have so much of sources of learning, so many influencers, so many content creators who say what they believe in. I'm not
Yeah.
questioning the intent of those people, right? But the application is very contextual, right? And if founders like you end up thinking that, hey, I want the feeling that he or she is having, that is
Hmm.
where you lose the journey, according to me,
Right.
right?
Right.
So PMF has started becoming this thing in the industry, which people say, hey, I want the PMF that Canva felt. I want the PMF that Figma felt. Why? Right?
Agreed.
It's almost like scrolling through Instagram and realizing, hey,
Yeah.
this person has 600 likes. I have only 20. But if you can get the same feeling of satisfaction with 20 likes, why not? Why not recognize it?
Absolutely.
Why not recognize that
Absolutely.
feeling of confidence and grow with it, right? So for me, PMF is like that. I have worked with multiple organizations where like we haven't had the revenue that Hubilo is
Hmm.
having, but
Hmm.
the feeling is almost similar or even better, where the PMF is there, right?
Right.
It's just there.
Right.
So yeah, I think just wanted to double down on that point that it's very contextual to the business, to the type of the
Yeah.
founder, the
Yeah.
personality of the founder, the personality of the founding team. So it's much
Agreed.
more broader than like a time scale or a metric or a revenue number or anything like that. So yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with it. And I think the social media analogy that you just mentioned is also something that I felt. I've seen, in the recent times, a couple of founders really pushing through building their personal brand, and how they're doing is a very broad kind of a strategy, right? Where they're talking about probably, in broad topics, right? That are giving them good views, but not necessarily these people don't belong to their ICP at all, right? Even the broader ICP that they have, not the niche ICP, right? These are random people that are coming in, right? So I wanted that satisfaction at that moment when I was having this conversation. But then I sat down and I realized what I am doing and what I am getting right now is actually good enough. And then I started comparing it with um, the right people, according to me, those who
yeah,
have the similar kind of mindset, and seeing that they are also well satisfied with the similar level of achievement that I have got so far, and I've got in the last 2 months, for example. I think I'm doing great, and I
yeah,
don't really need to divert my mind and broaden my
absolutely,
spectrum. I think same thing applies, as you mentioned, in the business aspect as well, and depends on which scenario you are, what kind of a mindset you have.
absolutely.
Completely agree. This is amazing, Tej. So 0 to 1, what is step one? Like I think I read on your LinkedIn, Pipe Monk, you
Yeah.
were the initial hire, I think the first, second, or the third person
Second,
to be
yeah, I
joined.
think second or third. I
Yeah.
specifically, it's too long back now. But yeah, there were two founders in a shared workplace and one developer, right? And
Oh, way too
so
early.
yeah, way too early and way too risky for me personally, very vulnerably sharing, because I had got a offer parallelly, which I
Hmm.
had to choose between, which is still alive, still growing. It's an international company, well-known
Nice.
SaaS brand in India. So I kind of rejected their offer to join Pipe Monk, right?
Okay.
And like I can't have absolutely even a zilch of doubt or looking back at that decision and saying, hey, maybe I could have been happier in the other company, because
Mhm.
two things. One is, I think like I said, like you also reflected, learning is very, very internal feeling, right? Like when you learn something good, you have a almost like orgasmic feeling that, hey, I learned something. And nobody can replace that. Nobody can tell you to have that feeling, right? So for me, learning in PipeMonk 0 to 1, and what is the first step, was learning which I still apply, which I will continue to apply wherever I go. And it is not something you will get in a framework, spreadsheet, or a podcast like this, right? Unless you talk to
Yeah.
that person. So
Yeah.
for me, step one, according to me, is actually realizing what the customer is feeling as a pain point every day, right? And I wanted to dissociate the product and service from the pain point. Even if it is there, even if you understand that insight, I think that's the first step. What I mean by that is anecdote, of course, which is this was my second day there, second or third day. And I had joined from a non SaaS company, NEN, National Entrepreneurship Network, where I had, I think, 1.5 to 2 years of good growth there, both as a professional and also as a community. We grew pretty well. So I was too excited to, kind of marketing karenge, and we will change the world in this industry, and I had this flywheel effect and all that in my head. So there is this guy, fellow founder, friend and mentor, for me and the founder then, Satya's friend, Vijay Sharma. I don't know if you have heard of him. He was the co-founder at Exotel and then started
Right.
belong.co.
Right.
So he wanted to meet me because he's the one connected Satya with me, right?
Okay.
So he was excited to see कि भाई Tejaswi क्या कर रहा है, what is Tejaswi up to. So he came in, he asked me, okay, tell me what's your plan with PipeMonk's marketing, right? So I was too excited to showcase what I have, in my head, and I spent like 10 minutes to draw a fly chart. Quora marketing, at that time Quora was growing big,
Right.
and website, blog, this, that, and I created a flywheel that I had in mind and all that. And I did it for 5 minutes, didn't look back, right? I just completed the diagram, and then I looked back and said, questions, confidently asked. So he asked me, okay, let's start here. Give me 3 pain points a PipeMonk customer feels every day or every week, whatever the frequency is. I was blank, right? Of course, it was day 3 or week 1. But that question is so first principle that any new hire, especially in marketing, can do the mistake I did, which is I have learned something in my past. I want to apply something here because it's a new job. Let's start applying, right? So I think regardless of you being a founder, salesperson, marketing person, first step, as long as it's a software or a product or a solution that you're selling, just understand the pain points the customer is facing. Because like you said, the content that really connects is something relatable. It could be something bad, it could be something good, something positive, something negative. So understanding the pain point, regardless of whether you are solving it or not, if you get that, then the trust builds. It's almost like therapy for somebody consuming content, that hey, this person just gets me, right? It could be as good as like a sitcom kind of a video, like a funny sketch, saying, hey, I know how your manager is too hands-on, as an example, right? If you see that video on LinkedIn, you will connect and you will want to see who is this person, what are they building, right? So according to me, it's the first step. Like, understand the key pain point somebody is really feeling. If you are solving it with your product and solution, great. If not, start creating content around it, and eventually people will start trusting you that your solution also works. So kind of, that's where I think I will not kind of overcomplicate it, but understand the pain points.
Right.
The more frequent the pain point is, the better.
Amazing. So that's step one. So basically, understand your customer and their pain points is step one, basically. That's
and a rider, very important rider, regardless of what you're building. It could be their philosophical problem, mental health problem. It could be their problem in a software which you are not building. Anything. I'll give examples later, but that's where I would sum it up.
Got it. So this was probably the first mistake that you made in your initial SaaS kind of a journey, and this is what you learned. So what were some other mistakes that you've come to realize that marketers or early, I won't say marketers really, because at early stage you don't have a lot of people and everybody's doing everything, right?
Yeah.
And trying to contribute everywhere. So what are other mistakes that people make in the 0 to 1 journey? Because this is kind of a very, a dynamic kind of a environment that you are in 0 to 1. You don't know where you're heading at all times, right? So what other mistakes, if you could, just list down?
I love that question.
Yeah,
um, I think the most common challenges I have seen companies and early employees 0 to 1 stage make is kind of, let's talk about content marketing, right? Like a
sure,
broader piece.
absolutely.
So, due to a lot of early advocates of inbound marketing,
Yeah,
content marketing had become or has become where you identify the problem, identify the ICP, and create content which is around your product, which talks about the problem, like tofu,
yeah,
basically, top of the
yeah,
funnel, right? So, for example, if I do it in Fielddrive as an example, Fielddrive does check-in, seamless check-in for on-site events, right? Amazing
right,
check-in experiences with the technology. Now, if I was conventional in my approach, I would say, okay, what is the problem they are facing? Queuing time. So let's talk about queuing time, right?
right.
Now, the challenge is these are anything conventional you do in an industry today, you
Hmm.
are already by definition in a herd, right? You have
Agreed.
2,400 competitors. Out of 400, maybe 300 will already be talking about queuing times,
Sharing time.
batch printing time. Yeah. Now those messaging works with ads, work with maybe website headlines. Of course, they will work. But
Yeah,
if you want a huge top of the funnel, which is like almost network effects or people kind of trusting your brand with more than what you're selling, that is when you need to, like I said, identify the problem they are facing day to day and talk about it, because the more human to human and relatability people get with your content, the better your bottom of the perform funnel will perform. So
right.
the mistake I did personally, giving you an example there, was PipeMonk used to integrate SaaS products, for example,
Okay.
e-commerce and accounting, let's say CRM with marketing automation, different SaaS products a company uses. So PipeMonk would kind of be the Zapier, but for
Hmm.
SMBs at that time, right?
Got it.
Now, the beauty about the product was, of course, it's one click, easy, time save, automation, and all that, which we use almost regularly now. Like 10
Yeah,
years back, it was not that common, right? So the first intuition for me and the founder was, hey, let's talk about cloud integration. Let's
right.
talk about automation. Let's talk about how much time you're saving and things like that. But looking back, if I had started talking about, hey, how to grow your e-commerce business. Why? Because I am connecting an e-commerce business with a CRM, right?
Yeah,
Or accounting. So when somebody opens LinkedIn in that time, or Instagram or whatever, as a founder or a accounting person in that, imagine looking at a content saying, hey, how to create your invoices manually, which
yeah,
has nothing to do with automation, right? But if I can easily explain it, they are starting to trusting me because I'm the one explaining it, and they will want to know who I am, and then pipe monk and all that.
interesting.
And it started working beautifully by, I think, 8th or 10th month. Even now, I think now the domain is down, of course, sorry.
Yeah,
But the most viral content was how to create invoices manually in QuickBooks, which is exactly the counter thesis of automation, right?
right.
Like we used to solve for automation, but we are actually teaching them manual process, due to which they used to realize how painful it is.
Yeah,
And they would scroll down and say, oh, PipeMonk does it in like 2 seconds or 3 seconds. Now,
amazing.
also, even if you look at it organically, if you want analytical input into this, if you search for invoice creation, the search volume will be huge, like really big. But if you look for integration between A and B, the search volume will
Yeah,
drastically go down.
right, right,
So even by analytics and by the research that you will do as a marketing team, these keywords will always work for you. The missing piece is the trust between the marketing team and the founder in this case, because
right.
founders have a tendency to talk about the product more because they are emotionally driven by it. They are invested in the product more than you as a person, as an
Hmm.
employee, right?
Right.
So you need to convince the early team and early founder saying, hey, I want X number of time and effort to kind
Yeah,
of prove this content problem, saying, hey, people want to listen to us talking about their daily life problems.
Understood.
So that is where we started learning later, but I wish I had that insight like 6 months before, because we would grow faster, of course. But yeah,
Right.
I have started to apply even in Fielddrive. If you see, our podcast talks about everything in event marketing. Event, it doesn't talk about queuing time only.
Yeah.
It's very hard to convince people internally, but if you have a manager, in this case, I have Sophie in my team who has the experience in the industry. She can talk about anything and people will listen to her, right? And that's amazing for us. So yeah, that's where my second mistake or biggest mistake, which I have started to kind of rectify now. Yeah.
Right. So we're going to come to the, how to convince the leadership, and now you being a leader, how do you get convinced? I think that is some interesting thing that we'll talk about to like a little later. One thing that I actually had in mind beforehand that I wanted to ask you, and I think you've already given hints of that answers through a few examples, is B2B marketing supposed to be boring, or has it become boring? But I think I have the answer already from you, but would love to hear more thoughts around it. I think you are a firm believer that it cannot be boring, right? Otherwise, you're going to miss out, right? So
I think that's a good question, but I would kind of use a different word, which is saturated, right? I think
saturated.
Sometimes boring. I personally, sorry, I'll rectify. Like, it's a very personal opinion. I love dry humor, right? I love boring TV series. Why? Because after so much of entertainment and busy work life, and having an argument with somebody and then having an exciting time with, you want to just like tune everything down, get bored for an hour and do something else, right?
Before you move on, like, give me a couple of examples. What do you watch?
Yeah, so I used to love, there is this Black Books. I don't know if you have. It's
No, I
a
have not
UK,
heard.
very old UK series, and maybe you can cut this. I used to download torrent files to watch this. It was Black Books, like very dry British humor, very clever, and all the characters are boring in that. Like, nobody has an interesting life. Nobody has those, breakups and people getting together. Nothing like that. It was just random days in a bookstore where there are three pretty psychotic people and insecure people, and like my insecurity at that time as a human being could connect with that, right?
Nice.
Saying, yeah, this character ka ye trait I'm able to connect with, and
Nice.
that became a huge cult following and all that. So I think content can be like that, B2B, man, which is, even if you're boring, if you're able to kind of have a unique voice in the ecosystem, that is, I think, what is missing. There are too many people trying to do the same thing. That is saturation for me. Saturation with similar content, saturation with similar voices, saturation with people trying to be like somebody else. So if somebody is genuinely boring, I would rather have that person create content than somebody trying to be exciting, right?
Got it.
So for me, yes, B2B can be very, very uniquely done. And the more diversity there is, the better. Boring is also part of a diverse portfolio,
diversity, right?
According to me, yeah. So
right.
Yeah.
Another interesting perspective you've put forward. I think the boring is still a part of the entire diversification that we always look for. We want to try everything possible, especially when it comes to marketing.
Yeah.
Right. So moving on, like, what other aspects were you looking at, or what were that you feel are important in that 0 to 1 journey? We've talked about, marketing. We've talked about the step one, understanding your ICP and the pain points. You mentioned about content strategy, and she shared an example. How do you start with that? What are other aspects that are important and where people lack? Because we all know that 0 to 1 is where we lose most of the startups, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's where it all ends for most, right? So what are other examples, other instances, other mistakes, again, that you feel people make? And again, you don't have to really stick to marketing, because again, raising the same point, I think you yourself would have seen so many things happening.
I
in your
think
journeys.
Interestingly, I started my career even though I was hired as a content marketer in title in my offer letter in the beginning. I did customer support for 6 months.
I saw that on LinkedIn,
Yeah. So drawing back to that example or that incident that I remember, after that conversation I had with Vijay and our founder Satya, I started actually picking up calls. There were very few calls because it was an international dial, but we had live chat at that time, right? So I used to take up every single live chat query. Earlier, the founder used to do it. I started doing it, and I learned so much. So I am a huge advocate of, regardless of which team you are, 0 to 1 has to be all hands customer support, right? I have had all hands customer support in two organizations, and both of them crossed the barrier of 1. Later is, of course, a different journey, but 0 to 1, all hands customer support is what I'm a huge advocate of. 3 reasons specifically. One is, rather than doing like a lot of keyword research and hey, which term people are using more, if you find 10 people using the similar word in live chat, that's like groundbreaking information for me, because the search engine is impacted by so many factors: geography, what nature of business you don't know. Google doesn't tell you what is the size of the business searching for the query, right? But somebody inquiring a bug in your software on live chat, you know who they are. You can understand which company they are from. You can understand who they are. So if you can map the keywords and the terms that people are using in that live chat or an email query, do a word cloud. It has worked beautifully for me in every instance. And the more people do it, the better, because of course it's nervous wrecking energy for anybody who is not used to it. I was very nervous for the first week. But the more you do it, the confidence builds internally that, hey, people are liking what we are building. People are hating what we are building. So gaining that perspective from the customer firsthand, nothing like it. Solving their problem, even as an emotional high, nothing like it. Because the higher you go in your marketing career, the lesser interaction you have with customers, sadly, right? So you are doing a great example. Second example would be, do podcast interviews with your customers, right? We love working with you in Fielddrive. I think when you talk to people like me, Sophie, or anybody in the past or future, you will started realizing, hey, this problem, this person talked for almost 20 minutes, so maybe I can solve it with my service, as an example.
Absolutely.
So all hands customer support by far is one of the best ways you can learn as a company in 0 to 1. Enough people don't do it. Enough people are scared of doing it. Founders kind of protect that domain of customer support very early on because they want to do it on their own, or hire a specialist. But how kind of open source it within the company, let everybody do it. We had so much fun in PipeMonk doing it. We used to joke about a bug. We used to joke about a customer story, like everything. Like we used amazing time, and we did it for almost 1.5 years after that. And highly advocated. Anybody brave enough to do it will kind of crack through for sure. I mean, pass through the cracks for sure.
Right. That's again pretty interesting to know. I never thought of this angle ever. How important the customer support becomes in the 0 to 1 marketing. So has it changed? Like, has this approach changed? Because this is what you talking, about. I think 7, 8 years back. Has this approach changed? Have you seen some new things coming up which which are supporting this kind of a feedback mechanism that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think when I started learning about this, there were very few people who used to talk about customer marketing or things like that, right? And customer marketing would be case studies. Do a case study, that is customer marketing. Market the customer, right? According to me, customer marketing is when the customer does your marketing.
Absolutely.
Right. For example, I have talked about you to more people.
Right.
Even though you haven't asked me a single bit ki bhai, please talk, refer this client. Or it's an organic feeling you start building when you trust a solution or a product or a person, right? So the newer trends I have seen is that, of course, there is customer advocacy. There is customer forums are being built within the company. Right. For example, in Hubilo, one of the smartest decisions Webhub and the leadership did is we have a customer advisory group who kind of helps have these closed room discussions to help kind of centralize what kind of features we can build for the
Right.
top customers in the future. So rather than
Right.
doing these surveys every 6 months or every year, hey, what should we build next? Like give them the
Yeah.
special treatment in a closed room, have dedicated listening effort, and let them talk among each other and get the insights as a company.
Right. Right. More like a
So,
community-led kind of a model.
yes. So
Yeah.
the example I gave from the past was live chat. Now I
Yeah.
think live chat, I don't know how many people have the time to kind of chat with a developer on a website. Not enough people
Yeah.
are doing it now.
Yeah.
Having a customer advisory group, having webinars, having podcast interviews with
Agreed.
customers almost every day, if not every week.
Yeah.
I'm a huge advocate of it. That I very few companies do it, but those who do it, I can't see them failing in the short term for sure. Long term, of course,
Agreed.
there are so many market factors,
Of course. Of
but
course.
yeah, this is a trend. I think I have seen very few people starting to build, which is talking to your customer every day, regardless of whether they have a problem with your product or not. Just have a chat, basically. More often, the
Right.
better. Yeah.
Right. I completely agree with this. I think this is this is being now structured with more, more community driven
Yes.
actions,
Community is
like
the
you
word. Yeah.
mentioned. Yeah, yeah. As you mentioned, like the group that Hubilo has, I think this would be on Slack probably, right? So
Yes.
Slack communities coming in like closed doors kind of communities, not broad communities, especially having their clients so that they can interact and get those insights. I think the product teams, at least not in the 0 to 1, but at least in the bigger companies, the product teams are starting to use this
Yes.
information for building their product pipelines.
Yeah, and people
Amazing.
love talking. I love talking.
Ah,
I don't know how long I have talked. So, if you are able to learn from somebody talking,
yeah,
uh, you have to cut through 90% of bullshit, and then you will get 10% of really
exactly.
actionable knowledge, right?
Absolutely.
But you can't ignore the 90% saying, hey, give me the 10%. Right? So, same with this podcast, I'm sure. If people listen to
Absolutely.
the whole podcast, they will only maybe use one or two things they can act on it. But I
Right.
have to talk for a while to get to that. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, coming back to content again, and that's also been one of your strongholds, right? In the 0 to 1 journey itself, how does content play a role in terms of the most important thing, which is probably acquisition of users, right? Getting more customers in the pipeline and building that kind of scalable framework, right?
yeah,
That's what they're looking at. And in that journey, you're also looking to raise the next round of funds, right? So you need to put some numbers on the table. And at that time, of course, because you are at an early stage, you don't have the funds to, probably do something like a paid ads, right? And do things at scale, right? How have you looked at it, and or probably if you've what's your thought around it, like how should you approach, because I feel the content strategy can actually help you get acquire customers at a very very low cost. One, just to add, it's not a question, but just to add the earlier point that you were mentioning, where we're getting insights, I think a community led growth is also another channel to get more customers at probably a
yes,
$0. And that's something I'm going to be covering in a very
nice.
podcast
Yeah.
coming soon. Community led growth with Rapti, who's now the
Oh,
CMO
yes,
for Bagasura. So she's actually being able to achieve it. They're acquiring customers at $0, and that's what
absolutely.
I'm going to
Yeah, I
be.
just saw I think, a LinkedIn post from her or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's right.
nice.
So yeah, so the question is, just to sum it up, how important is content strategy for acquiring customers at an early stage?
Yeah, I have a tendency to go philosophical, and you have the tough
Absolutely,
job of summarizing it. Okay, so I'll leave that to you.
no problem.
For me, content strategy is a function of the stage the company is in, the emotional state the founder is in, and you as a marketer or a content marketer, your strengths, right?
Yeah,
It's almost like a Venn diagram for me. For example, like you said, lot of companies are following content marketing examples or strategies from funded companies.
mm,
The journey of a bootstrapped company is very different from a funded VC,
right.
early stage funded company, right? So for me, if it is a bootstrapped company, you have, of course, more playroom to experiment because there is no investor breathing down your neck, right?
Yeah,
So when you have a bootstrapped company who is investing in a longer story that, hey, let's build a stable business in the short term and long term, they don't have a choice. They have to, get the money in to feed each other,
Yeah.
right? So for me, bootstrap business has a very different approach of content marketing. That is where these examples of, hey, talk about any problem the customer is facing comes into play, or get into these forums and community building activities, because there is no community which has worked in the short term but will suddenly stop functioning. It's a
Agreed.
very network effects thing.
Yeah.
For example, I have talked to you once in a podcast now. If you want guests from my network, I'll easily recommend you, and there is no way it can fail, right?
Yeah.
So even if you build a relationship with one or two people in that community, you have kind of figured it out in that framework, right? So second learning, which is very counterintuitive for venture funded versus very different for venture versus bootstrap, is bootstrap company, according to me, has the ability to do non-scalable things. What I mean by that is, and honestly, if you ask me, VC funded companies should also do non-scalable content marketing in the beginning. I'll give you a few
Right.
examples. So when we look at email as a channel, email marketing or content through email or newsletters, a lot of the pressure is about getting click-through rates and getting more subscribers in the news list and all. Because why? If you crack this click-through rate, then you will kind of scale it and repeat it. Ask how many of these companies get replies from their customers saying, hey, I love this subject line, I love this video that you did. Very few, if not none, right? Now those are the companies who will kind of break the market, according to me. If you are able to do non-scalable things, forget about the next week's newsletter, get this newsletter subject line right, get the engagement rate and the replies going. So if you are planning to ask that question about metrics in this conversation, I would stick to engagement rate and number of replies, because that is actually building a rapport with the customer that you're eventually reading. And if you get a reply, I'm pretty sure that customer will either forward the newsletter or share a screenshot of it with their friend saying, hey, I want a subject line like this in our newsletter next week, as an example, right? So for me, the content marketing is a almost like a equation, right? If the founder is nervous and short-sighted and insecure about what they're building, then you will have a lot of pressure and you will have to do scalable content marketing. For example, podcasts or all those, what is that called, listicles, top 10, top 5 ways to do this. And it works in certain cases. I'm not kind of denying any of it. But for me as a person, I'm very, very self-aware that I'm much better with non-scalable things where I have fun, the customer has fun, the founder sees the growth journey, but it needs a different framework of a mindset from both as a marketing leader, as the founder, and the stage of the company. If you do what I did in, for example, Canva, I don't know, like do they have a culture like that internally? But you can do that in Wingify, because Wingify is a bootstrap business. They have a steady growth. And any new marketer who comes in and says, hey, I want to do this, I don't think you will get a lot of pushback there, because it's an interesting idea and you want to try it out, right? So all those zero budget marketing strategies, content marketing strategies work if you get a confidence and alignment with the founder, but alignment with the stage of the company also. If you're a Series A funded who has to prove their merit and their valuation, stick to the proven examples of content marketing, figure it out with the keywords and topics, but experiment if you can. If you have a culture, there are very few funded companies who have that culture. But I'm much more excited when you have a playtime, when you have that, you are a founder but you're still doing content marketing right now, right? So I think that's a good example to sum it up.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think at the 0 to 1 level, when there is no pressure coming from above, I think that's a really, really good time to try out things, to experiment a lot of things. That's what you mentioned, right? And because you never know, you might be able to create a new category out of it, right?
Absolutely.
A new category type of content, and probably then people will start. You will be added to the playbook that exists for the way forward, right? And only when you do those experiments will you have that possibility of achieving this kind
Yeah.
of a scenario.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, right, saturation, the term that you use, right, there, the playbook also has saturations, obviously, depending on the kind of business you are in, your mindset that you've been talking about, the mindset of the founders and the teams. So you always need new things. And similarly, connecting with content only, what I tell my team that, okay, because we work with so many clients at the same time, right? So there are obviously, it's the same brains working on so many clients, right? So you do get that overlapping of thoughts with respect to content being produced.
Yes.
So I tell my content team specifically that always, right, that whenever you're working on when a client comes in and you start working, it's okay to reuse things that you have seen worked for other clients, and aligning the logic and
Yeah.
setting that context right with respect to this new client. But always try something new for each and every client, because that is how your entire repository will keep growing up,
Absolutely. Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And I think that's the kind of point exactly that you made, and I
And it's
like that we
almost
have that.
like it's like an elephant in the room, which
Yeah,
like very few people recognize. I'll give you the uh, theoretical part of this. When you read a case study, by
hmm,
design, you are trying to know what somebody did, which they didn't know
yeah,
by reading a case study, right?
right,
When you read a case study about Canva, how they grew from 0 to 1 or 0 to 1,000 or 0 to 1 million, they didn't read a case study of somebody else going from 0 to
exactly.
1. They had to create that in their
Great,
category. Of
that's
course,
right.
they also learned from somebody. I'm not denying the value of learning from case studies. I'm saying the exact journey is your own.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly.
If you want to exactly follow a playbook, like you said, I thanks for using that word. I'm so inundated with that word in the industry, which is like a playbook is somebody reflecting on their learning and saying, "Hey, this is what we did to reach here."
Yeah,
But by definition, somebody else just can't go through the roadmap unless they want to, just have that short-term feeling of I'm
yeah,
progressing.
yeah,
They will have to craft their own journeys. Look at
exactly,
personal, even outside business, your family members who have done well in their life. Everybody has their own journey.
absolutely.
They will write their own biographies, they will write their own journeys, but you can't kind of just repeat it point by point, chapter by chapter.
Agreed.
In each chapter, you will recognize one value, take it in your journey, implement it. But following a playbook, good luck with that. I'm not a believer in that. Learn from a playbook, learn some tidbits. But if you
Yeah,
think, hey, Canva reached their PMF in 1 year, I will try to do it. Good luck with that, right? So that's where I think I wanted to kind of
agreed.
draw a line that
Yeah,
case studies are done by the people who are not reading case studies day to day. They
yeah,
are trying
exactly.
something new day to day. That's why there is a case study about them, right? So yeah.
Absolutely. Again, I love the perspectives that you have with everything. So, one last question about the 0 to 1 journey,
Yes.
and then definitely, because you've been mentioning about the mindset of the founders and the teams and the alignment between people, definitely going to end with that only. One last question, and so how important is the entire ops, the entire infrastructure in the 0 to 1 marketing, or do you feel that at that stage it's okay to be, let's say, on a Google sheet?
Hmm. Good question. I actually wrote a blog post. I forgot when it was. About using marketing automation as a problem solver, but not the solution, right?
Okay,
Marketing
okay,
automation or any process.
yeah,
A lot of process advocates or process junkies, if I can use the word, they have a tendency of looking at process as a solution itself, right? That, hey, if you follow this process, you will reach the goal. That's not going to happen, right? For me, a process is one part of the journey of solving a problem to
yeah,
make it less brain racking, less mentally disturbing for you as a team. That, hey,
hmm,
if I am this stressful, a software can maybe make it like this stressful. That's it.
that's good.
This delta is what you're paying for.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
think, as an example, I used to have these discussions early on in my own career as well, saying, hey, let's buy HubSpot. It will help us, do marketing, generate better leads and all.
yeah,
BS. Like nowhere close to reality. HubSpot is an IPO company, so I'm absolutely no regret in naming them. I think if you look at a software or even a person for that matter, that hey, if I hire a PPC expert, PPC will be solved, good luck. Similarly, processes are, according to me, almost like sharpening the tool. It's not the tool itself, right? If you don't sharpen the tool regularly, it will go blunt, you will fail as somebody mining or whatever. So for me, a process is helping you do something better. So
Right.
to answer your question, if you have enough things kind of where you are seeing returns, start documenting them, 0 to 1 journey itself. But don't start documenting everything you are trying out, because then you will not have enough time to try it out itself, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I am not a huge advocate personally of documenting every experiment you are doing regardless of the result, right? I think you should start documenting when you start launching something, or when you see
Right.
returns,
Yeah.
or when you see something breaking down. Hey, this didn't work, let's document what didn't work. I'm
Yeah.
a huge supporter of that kind of a philosophy of process and whatever.
Makes sense.
But just to
Makes
launch
sense.
something, if you spend like n number of hours documenting it, maybe too much of time spent in something, you won't get a huge result out of. So but yeah, there are very few examples I have in my career in different teams where I have seen process junkies do it, like document everything, have a clear process handover review, even at early stage. But the successes I have seen is that you try out different things, but when you see something working or not working, make sure you document all the learning.
Right.
But yeah, document all the metrics from day one, day zero.
Right.
Of course, I'm
Of
not
course. Of
a huge
course.
advocate of that. But the process, the fine tuning of handovers, review cycles, I think that should come when you see something working or not working. You don't need to fix something when it's not breaking or when it's not even working.
Yeah.
um,
No,
yeah,
I think thank you for speaking, saying this out loud, actually. I think a lot of people start again because this is so much like information abundance on the internet,
exactly.
and different journeys. When you talk to people, they have gone through different journeys, and you just try to pick things up, and probably it is not a fit for you. People start thinking then if you're not doing these things, you're actually backing out of it. You're not pushing enough. You're not putting that effort to do things. But I think it more importantly, as you just mentioned, you have to just look at your own mindset and what is most important for you at that
Yeah,
scenario, right?
yeah,
And at an early stage, as you mentioned, till experimentation is much more important than anything. And once
yes,
you start seeing results, it's probably 3-4 months down the line, you can easily track back the last 4 months and just document it at that time.
exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
right. And very, very, interesting, again, point that you've made here. So let's jump to the people factor, right? And I've got a feeling we've not had a lot of conversations before, but in just the last 40-45 minutes that we've talked, I've got a feeling that, and you've why am I saying I've got a feeling you've actually spoken it out loud, that you are more a people person, and you
for
look
sure.
at
Yeah,
emotions also
yes.
in the business play, in your career as well. um, talk a little about that, like how important it is. And would you agree, like I feel people miss out on that. People restrict their
Absolutely.
emotions and their natural mindsets when they come in the working place, at least at an employee level, and obviously at the founder level as well. um, how important it is, and why do you think people are hesitant enough to take it out, and because that is important, right? That
Yeah,
once you put it out on the table, everybody's emotions, everybody's mindset, and visions, for example, and then you can club it up together as an organization and move forward
yeah,
accordingly.
yeah. I think I'll take the analogy of sports, right? So
Yeah.
if you look back at examples of football teams, cricket teams,
Yeah.
any team sport, to be honest,
Yeah.
it is actually more than the skills. Like Moneyball is a good example. Like
Yeah.
Moneyball talks about this philosophy of, hey, if you are able to find statistically complementary people, then
Yeah.
you have the perfect team. But they never won anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the teams that win big is not just luck. Of course, luck is a big factor. You can have the right people, right emotions, and everything, but of course, luck can f you up. But the lot more success stories of people like Dhoni, as an example. If
Right.
there are enough cricket lovers here, or even Dhoni
Of
lovers,
course.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Dhoni is a person coming from a tier 2 city, so called,
Right.
who had a hunger in his belly that, hey, I want to build a name for myself, of course, but I will learn along the way, and I'll take India, maybe Captain India. Don't know his personal story, but basically why I'm bringing this example is hiring is a lot about finding the right people who want to be in the journey that you are in, right?
Yeah.
Especially 10. I think after having maybe 500 employees, you don't need to worry about the emotion of every person that you're
Agreed.
hiring or their
Agreed.
state of life or anything. But the first 50 employees, I would say, had
Right.
to be energetically, emotionally bought into you as a person, you as a company, the struggles you're going through day to day, the insecurities you have as a human being, and the complementary skills you have with that person, right? Much 400 times more important than skills or proven
100%.
portfolio of companies you have done before. I'll give you an example, my own example, of course, where pipe monk happened in a way that I had interviewed for multiple companies, and Satya was I think, yeah, like two co-founders and one developer.
Hmm.
And of course, no confidence building measure ki bhai salary 40% pay cut, almost 30-35% pay cut, I think, if I'm not wrong. So there was absolutely no number that he would give me that would made me ki bhai I will join this company.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Yeah.
not, right? Either he knew it by his own intelligence, or it was like organic conversation that we started talking on Skype at that time. And then he told that, hey, please come to our office, let's talk face to face, and you will see how we are working, what we are building, and all that. So when I met the three people, I think there were only two people in that time, three people, sorry. And there is a synchronization of energies, right? It's very hard to explain, but you feel like, hey, I want to be like that person in that table, sitting in that almost half broken chair,
Yeah.
building that software with them, right? Or selling that software if you're a marketer or a salesperson. That feeling, I don't think a resume or something can just, you can't write it in your resume, right?
Right.
So of course resumes are important to filter, but to find the right people, you have to talk to them. You have to kind of give them the playground. I am a huge advocate of a dating period early on, like 1 or 2 or 3 months, depending on the scope of failure, that figure out how they think day to day, both as a founder and you as an employee. If the match is not working out, please move on with your life and move on with your career. But
Yeah.
if it works, absolutely no reason it won't work in the long term. Of course, long term in the sense like 0 to 1 journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm a huge advocate of finding like actually knowing the person who is building and the people who are building it with them. If you
Yeah.
can't gel with them day to day, you are spending half of a day with them, almost 10 to 12
Exactly.
hours in the
Agreed.
early stage. So I think more than skills, more than past record, I am a good case study. Early on in my career, I had no experience in SaaS, and here I am kind of trying to tell what I have learned in my career now, right? So I had absolutely no proven skills before that, and I have built a career around my failures and learning from my failures. So I think, yeah, like finding the right people who think either better than you, like you, or you can think, to help them
Absolutely.
in their journey. Find those people. I think you found your community, tribe, company, whatever word you want to use.
100%.
Fill it in.
100%.
I think that helps.
100%. I think I think for most part of the podcast, I have resonated with your experience, and this is something that me and my entire organization would resonate because every person right now, we are 35 odd people in the company. Everybody that was hired right from the first person till the 35th person are people that either of the four founders know personally,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And that has been and no skill set. And
Yeah.
I can be open about it because we've delivered the great results in the last 2 years, any
Yeah.
which way.
Yeah.
So I don't I have no fear of that. There neither the founders nor anyone in the team has had SaaS experience before.
Yes.
The team is built of young individuals who are younger, below 25. I think maximum are between 18 to 25 years of age. The only reason it's all working out and things are working out really well is because they all believe in the broader vision and they
Yes.
there is a sync with respect to the mindset. As you mentioned, right, what you felt, I think a lot of our our team members felt when they met us and when they talked to us, having known them before. For example, Aman that you work with
Yeah.
was actually my student. I used to teach marketing
Nice.
part time when we were struggling, and that's where. And I think I almost have 4 5 students that I taught in the company right now,
Yeah, yeah.
doing really really well. And Aman is a person that, as you mentioned, right, is a person that now I feel he knows much more than I do, right? At
Absolutely.
least
I
with respect
cannot
to
surprise you.
performance marketing.
Yeah.
So that's a great, and thank you again for calling these things out. I think people don't speak about all of these things. A lot of even the we have 4 co-founders. One, like a couple of them, I won't take names, but it's completely all right. They have that tendency of we need people who are already experienced and skilled
Yeah.
enough, but you need a match. That's what
Yeah.
you need.
I
Everything else
think
can be taught.
that is one thing. And second thing is, how do I put it? A lot of the lessons we learn in a business or whatever is actually looking back lessons which our forefathers and for generations past have figured it out. We are trying to write a playbook for it, right? I'll
Yeah,
give you an example. For example, finding the tribe is literally how tribes were built, right?
yeah,
Like how do, like, and events, our founder Webhow took this example.
yeah,
Virtual events, online events, in-person events are all what? Gathering of people. How
yeah,
did gather people around a common interest, around a shared goal? How
yeah,
did stories happen in like Homo sapiens or
yeah,
Homo erectus or whenever, like fire, they built
yeah,
fires
yeah.
and they gathered with
Gather
their
the
food and they talked with each
yeah,
other,
all
story.
water.
Exactly. So if you look at actually us as humans, our instinct is to find like-minded people. Of course, skills need not be the same, like you said, complementary, and they have to be either smarter than you or they are ready to learn. But finding those, that tribe is what a company is about. You will figure it out, unless again, very few companies are there who have investors money, investors pressure, and like above
Yeah,
directions coming from above. If you are there, of course there are enough playbooks you can kind of learn from. But if you are ready for a journey from like building your own set of solutions, problems, and figuring it out, stable growth, or failure, honestly 90-95% regardless of which playbook you follow will fail, but you
yeah,
will learn as human beings and you will build something better next time, or you will learn from those mistakes, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, just summing it up, we don't need to learn things which are, as human beings, we know as instinct, built over
yeah.
generations. In our genes it is coded that we love working with people who are like us.
Agreed.
As
Agreed.
simple as that.
100%.
Yeah.
100% agreed. So last two questions, Tej, and we're going to
Yeah.
wrap it up.
Sure.
Um, so with respect to now you being in the leadership role for quite some time, and you've done it before as well. Um, what kind of a team do you need? And both the questions are probably aligned as well.
That's okay.
What kind of a team do you prefer? What do you need in your team now? And let's talk about specifically probably about Fielddrive itself, right?
Yeah.
Fielddrive is also in their initial journeys itself, I would say, right? What is the kind of team that you want ideally, right?
Yeah. I mean, I started my leadership per se kind of a journey after Wingify. So Wingify was the first company where I got a team. I inherited a team. I didn't get the time enough to hire somebody, and by the time I hired somebody, I left. So a very interesting story there. But regardless, I think team building is actually about building trust and delegation. Those are two words I keep iterating since I started, making those mistakes and learned this. Trust, because trust can be with a vendor, trust can be with an agency like yours, trust can be with an employee, trust can be with a founder, right? So team building for me starts with trust. Either you trust the person or you don't. If you don't trust the person, don't let that person hire a team around that. I have seen enough founders, just
Yeah,
because of the stage of the business they are in, they will start trusting people they don't trust, and they will build a whole team around it, and then you don't trust the team itself, right? So for me, first find the people you trust, build that trust. If you can't find the people, I mean, find skilled people, start trusting them, then delegate the hiring. Hiring, according to me, after a point cannot be driven only by the founder or the hiring manager, or everybody should be bought into that hiring process.
Agreed.
And team building is about trust and delegation, right? Now, according to me, hiring doesn't end when you actually a person joining date, right? Hiring happens when they actually start delivering and they start learning along with you. Because if you don't reach that point, there will be a costlier hiring mistake than somebody you didn't hire, right?
Yeah.
So for me, hiring actually process has to be from the trust you build with the person hiring,
Hmm.
then finding the person they want to hire, then onboarding them and kicking off the alpha beta project which they can contribute in as a employee, right?
Got it.
So for me, it comes with two or three things. One is the stage of the company, right? If you're a very early stage, find hustlers, maybe generalists, or people who are
Yeah.
ready to just grind it, day-to-day problem solving. That is any early stage person will kind of reflect on it. Not a huge learning there. Second point, which I think many people miss out on, is how transparent they are when they F it up, right?
Yeah.
This can be judged during an interview round. Like when you see a mistake in an interview assessment or something, just ask them, how did you land up here? Tell me, what did you learn? Why did you do it this way? So if somebody is like very, very apologetic or very, very self-defensive, saying, hey, sorry, I will do it better next time, I think for me it's a yellow flag, because
Yeah.
they are not comfortable with failure, right? They are not comfortable accepting that, yeah, they messed it up and this is how they learned it. If they're excited about their failure, that brings my excitement up. I would
Absolutely.
want a second round with that person, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
longer hiring periods, I'm a huge advocate of, because if you hire the wrong person, the period, even 3
Agreed.
months looks like 3 years, honestly.
Agreed. Agreed.
Second thing is onboard them during the. I mean, I have seen so many companies in India. I don't know if it's a global problem. They don't use probation period like a probation period. Probation period is almost like dating. You have to figure it out with that person, right? Give
Yeah.
them enough assignments, give them enough time to understand what you're doing, what you're not doing, what has
Mm-hmm.
worked, what hasn't worked,
Mm-hmm.
and then see where they are 3 months later, 2 months later, whatever that period is.
Right.
Probation period almost like a soft copy in your PDF. This is a probation, and then 6 months later, that person is no longer there, right? So I'm a huge advocate of leveraging probation period to experiment, to learn each
Okay.
other, and giving them a project they can learn end to end or execute
Got it.
end to end. The better they are with accepting and rectifying a mistake, the better. If they are defensive, for me, it's a big yellow flag. Uh, the more transparent they are, the better for me. And the hiring period should take time, unless it's like, which I have absolutely no experience with, 1,000 member teams or IPO companies where there are bigger problems to play. So
Yeah. Of course.
yeah.
Got it. All right. So yeah, last question that I ask all the clients that come on the podcast and has to be there. How has the experience been with GrowthSpree?
Awesome. Yeah, I love that question. I think growth spree for me has been, how do I put it? In one word, me and Sophie. Sophie is my manager,
Yeah.
who is the GM of Hubilo on site. So we keep reiterating this word. You feel like an in-house team, right? I think if you want to play that in your homepage, I think you should try an experiment saying we are an
Yeah.
agency that is like your in-house team, because
That's my
there is,
pitch.
yeah, that's so many agencies work like a transactional relationship where you have a
Agreed.
weekly call, a daily call, you say something, they say something, then you are stressed, then you kind of okay, ye kar lenge, this is how we'll do it, and
Yeah.
then next week it's again the same meeting, you say something, you give some directions and whatever. So with you, it's almost like every day I can asynchronously talk with the team saying, hey, this is what we have learned from this organic post. What have you learned from the paid marketing post? So to give context to the listeners, we work with you on growth marketing, right? Like performance marketing and ABM, outbound email marketing. So the channel already performing really, really good for us is PPC and AdWords. So there, I think the way you talk to us, the way you listen to us is very therapeutic, of course, as somebody who doesn't need to stress out on how to talk to you and how to share our learning with you. But more important that I am like absolutely not thinking about what I am delegating to you. and your team, and trusting you. And that built, I think, within a couple of weeks, if not lesser. So I think GrowthSpree is all about the two words that I talked about in hiring in-house team as well: trust and delegation. With you, I have trust. I whenever I delegate some goal to you or some number to you or a budget to you, I'm actually sitting back and trusting you that you will figure it out. Even if we burn it, at least we will have good learning by the end of the month, right? So that kind of a relationship is very rare, even with in-house employees or agencies. And I think we have kind of cracked it with you guys. So I'm pretty grateful for that relationship. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the kind words,
Thanks.
Tejaswi.
Thank you, Vishal.
The team is going to love this. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing all these insights, all the mistakes that you made, and being open about it, and helping a lot of viewers that we will get on the podcast will actually be people in the 0 to 1 kind of a journey, and I think it's going to help them a lot. I could resonate with a lot of your points because probably I am also in that kind of a journey, though it's a little different being in the service world.
Yes.
However, I can get that point because we are a small team, small kind of a business working with clients. So it's really you've given some really interesting perspectives about so many things. Which is I feel really good about doing these podcasts now, because every time I'm getting a leadership person like you, we're getting so many new insights. I met with Sophie. I did a podcast with Sophie yesterday. She talked about events, and again, events is also something I resonate with a lot now that it's a part of our growth plan. There are so many things I could learn from her. There's so many things I learned from you, and I'm sure the viewers, as they keep increasing, hopefully, of this podcast, will start realizing how great insights we're getting from people like you. So thank you so much for that.
No, I think, anybody listening who has any questions on what we discussed, I am approachable on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is one social media platform I'm kind of not apologetic of being on. I learn a lot from the platform. So if anybody wants to connect, please connect. And I'm pretty transparent in my failures, my lessons, and growth story as such. So happy to share more on any follow-up anybody needs. So thanks for your time. Of course, you're a very good listener. I have seen you listen well on calls and also on this podcast. So good luck with the podcast. Looking forward to the
Thank you so much.
episodes. Take
Thank
care,
you so much, Tejaswi. You too. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Yes.